So, there I was, browsing Twitter, minding my own business when BAM! The brand new cover art for the latest Dragon Ball game, Kakarot, surfaced online. Needless to say, I had some thoughts about it, and so, being the tactful and respectful person that I am, I sent my thoughts out into the Twitter sphere. Okay, fine, maybe I did go a little overboard with the criticism, but I did think it was boring. And oh my, did other people agree in both liking, retweeting, and in the comments down below this tweet. However, I think it goes without saying that this perspective has its detractors too. Many considered this cover to be great, and others went as far as to call me disrespectful, and called my ability to make a better one into question. So, today I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is. Today, I'm gonna make the Dragon Ball Z Kakarot cover I always wanted. And I hope I don't screw this up. Alrighty, so in order to begin this ridiculous task, I opened up my trusty drawing application, Paint Tool Side. After setting the resolution and dimensions to the "my computer hates me now" setting, I began conceptualizing. So, in a nutshell, what I wanted to do was to create a snapshot of Goku, so to speak. Something that either captures some of his story or his personality. I mean, the game is called Kakarot after all, and I think that opens up lots of possibilities for an interesting cover. And honestly, that really was my problem with the official cover. It's completely inoffensive and honestly, just really easy. Tons of games are doing box art like this now, and I honestly expected more from the cover when the title of the game is Kakarot. There's just so much that can be done with that concept alone. So before I started drawing anything, I made mental notes of what I thought about when I said the name Kakarot. I thought of Goku, Super Saiyans, his staff, Nimbus, Dragon Balls, the moon, Freeza, etc. Now, I knew I couldn't use all of these, but I did want to include most of them, and that's when I started mapping out a really rough composition, which honestly was weird because I was also drawing something with the knowledge that a decent chunk of it will be covered by logos, titles, and headers for the game's casing. However, after drawing landscape thumbnails on YouTube for God knows how long, drawing in portrait felt fresh and offered a lot in the way of composition. And for those that don't know, composition is how you orientate or format your drawing or artwork. Think of it as the blueprint for a house. A composition layout is sort of the blueprint for the final art piece. And so, I started doodling. I began by outlining the shapes I wanted for this cover, where certain characters would be and what I would be putting where. Because it's a game cover we are creating here and not just a nice piece of artwork, I needed to be conscious of where the title for the game would be such that it wouldn't obstruct anything important and that the eye would be drawn to it. I gotta sell those copies after all. Thankfully, a lifetime of making YouTube thumbnails prepared me for such a problem. I put a nice big semicircle at the top. Who knows, I might put a moon there or something. I mean, it does hold significance with Goku's life after all, it is part of his Saiyan ancestry. However, since the game is called Kakarot, I just didn't think one Goku on the cover would be enough. There's always been two sides to the character at least. A kind, innocent side, and another that gets very serious when all is on the line. With this in mind, I opted to scribble down onto the canvas a crude Kid Goku and his Super Saiyan transformation as fitting representations of this character's duality. I swear I'll draw better than this later. Once this outstanding display of drawing humility is over with, and I have any idea of where the hell I'm going with this, I move on to the sketch phase, using this as my basis for composition from here on in. As you've probably already noticed, in addition to drawing an outstanding Kid Goku earlier, I also drew his space pod. The idea I had was to have on one cover a beginning and an end for the character. I wanted to draw his first moments outside the capsule after landing on Earth, confused and apprehensive with his older, more serious Super Saiyan form roaring behind him confidently. To draw this little Kakarot, I used Dragon Ball Super Broly when referencing the armor. The pose, however, came from the top of my head. Once I was satisfied with the sketch, I began sketching the pod he arrived in, again using reference of the craft from Dragon Ball Super Broly in order to understand how the inside worked, and I grabbed a picture from Google Images. All in all, this little guy was fun and a nice change of pace from drawing the typical Dragon Ball adult characters I always do. With that said, now it's time to draw the typical adult Dragon Ball characters I always do. As the second part of this cover art, I wanted the innocence of the younger Goku to be in direct contrast with the older, more serious side of himself. While following the initial composition blueprint, I began drawing a front view of a Super Saiyan Goku. All pretty standard stuff. Tried to get the face right, spent some time on the jaw and face shape, drawing his ears in and his neck. However, there was one minor problem. The drawing was trash and needed to be destroyed. Needless to say, starting over wasn't exactly my favorite thing to do after dedicating a decent chunk of time to this drawing, but this is Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, damn it. It deserves my best. So I started again, this time trying a slightly more difficult angle, but it is one of my favorites from a frontal view. And I'm happy to announce that I was much happier with how the head turned out for this one. That being said, I still had to draw all of the body, and I'm sure that won't take forever. After spending what felt like 4 hours referencing tons of real-life muscle groups, I decided to call it a day with the body. Considering most of it will be obscured by a small child with a spaceship anyway, which makes my inner artist cry, but these are the sacrifices we make in the name of progress, right? As part of the next step, I shed a tear as I hide the Screaming Saiyan's perfect abs behind the young armored Goku when something terrible comes to my attention. The composition doesn't work at all, predominantly because the Kid Goku and the pod he came in are standing in 3/4 pose while the Screaming Super Saiyan is front on. Something needs to change here, and while I love this cute little Goku sketch, there's absolutely no way I'm discarding the Screaming Super Saiyan that easily took me 2 hours to fully render. Which means, you guessed it, I have to discard this little Goku sketch and start from scratch. Yes, I'm not kidding. But I mean, who needs sleep? My dad always said real gold doesn't fear trial by fire, so here I go marching into the flames, burning the candle at both ends. Since I had already drawn Goku with his armor on, I decided to draw Goku from the very first chapter of Dragon Ball without it instead. And that's when I had an idea for a really fun visual. So the first thing I'm gonna do is make sure that this image of Kid Goku is drawn front on. No more composition mistakes this time. But one thing I did want to do was to recreate the praying pose Goku assumed at the beginning of the story with the 4-star ball. And with the color scheme I have in mind, I think it's gonna look awesome. I hope. In truth, discarding the last Kid Goku sketch was upsetting, but this new one I'm actually much happier with, both from a compositional perspective and an artistic one. He just looks so damn cute, and I love this idea of him praying to the Dragon Ball. It really helps tie the whole piece together and works well within the composition, it being perfectly in line with the 2 other heads straight down the middle of the canvas. Drawing his little hands in prayer was a little tricky at first, but I settled on a pose I was happy with eventually. I checked the final composition with the Super Saiyan illustration, and by God, it works! So, now that we're happy with the sketch and composition, we move on to the most satisfying part, the line art. This was probably the most time-consuming part in isolation. Despite it not requiring much thought at all, I did fix and change a few things as I went through with the anatomy. Additionally, in areas that lack detail like the mouth, I took the time to add the appropriate detail to the roof, the tongue, and the teeth. I played around with the idea of adding veins to his face, also, reminiscent of the original anime's transformation, but in the end, I thought it was going a little overboard, and so I opted to move forward without them. However, the biggest task had to be the hair. So it's just as well hair is my favorite thing to draw on a character. Dragon Ball has a lot of different ways to draw hair, the Lego look, solid color, wavy, but I, instead of going the routes a lot of modern Dragon Ball likes to take, I tried to make each bunching of hair assume its own unique shape, consistency, along with random strands poking out here and there like regular hair tends to do. I love the results this approach yields, and it's the way I almost always draw my hair if I'm not trying to recreate or mimic a style. That said, it's not exactly a time-sensitive practice, and the line art alone took well over an hour to finish with the hair. I rechecked the composition to make sure everything is lining up correctly. Moment of truth time. I really don't want to redraw anything, and thank God it works. But one tiny little thing is still bothering me about this. Now, it's not a big deal, and thankfully it's an easy fix. You see that little tail there? Well, that tail unbalances the entire piece. You see, there's nothing on the other side of the image to counterbalance that tail, so let's add something. I still have to draw the shredded pants and shirt bits on the Super Saiyan Goku illustration, so I figured the belt would be a fitting way to fill up that negative space. And surprise, surprise, it totally was. The tattered clothes look about right, but really, this whole thing really comes together when we add color. In the comments under my original tweet, folks seem to like the red backdrop of the original piece, so let's keep that. Now, what inspired the color palette I want to use for this piece came from an idea I had for the Dragon Ball itself. Instead of going with traditional colors, I wanted it to glow. But instead of showing you the entire process of me laboriously coloring it, seriously, it took about 4 hours, I want you to get the full effect on first viewing. So 3, 2, 1... As you can see, the glow I used for the Dragon Ball I mirrored with the glow of the Super Saiyan hair. I used nice and warm colors for the skin tones and the clothes on both characters. I also added these beams of light to the Dragon Ball that I thought added this mystical quality to it. There are dozens of layers at work for the color alone, and the entire piece has close to 100 layers total. My computer might have crashed a number of times getting to this point, but we are not done! While looking at this, you might have noticed that there's a little pink glow on adult Goku's shoulders and arms. That's because we have one more thing to add that ties this entire piece together. Unfortunately, because I'm an idiot, I forgot to record this part, but I do have the line art and the color layers for you guys to check out in isolation. Essentially, I wanted a villain to look ominously from behind, and who better a villain for Goku than Freeza? He has a long history with the character and is the reason for his being sent to Earth in the first place. I ended up drawing his face in full, but in reality, I only needed his eyes and a pink glow to be emitted from them to offset the yellows and oranges from the main piece. I know I said I wanted to include the moon at the beginning, but I think this works better here. And there you have it. Now's the time for the moment of truth, where we add the logos, age warnings, branding, and game case header to reveal the final piece. I give you my interpretation of the Dragon Ball Z Kakarot video game box art. And now I'm going to sleep. If you like this artwork, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching.